separate outbreaks of COVID-19, their true scale not fully known because aides refused to discuss cases publicly. In his first full day in office yesterday, a day after the daily count of COVID-19 deaths in the U.S. set a new record high of more than 4,400, President Biden signed additional executive orders aimed at increasing testing and speeding up vaccinations. He's unveiled his wartime national strategy to boost the fight against the raging pandemic, including making the coronavirus test followed by quarantine mandatory for all travelers coming from overseas. Announcing the measures, he said it would take months to defeat the pandemic, but America would get through this if people stood together. The Senate Finance Committee will vote today on Janet Yellen's nomination for Treasury Secretary, an early litmus test of bipartisan support for President Biden's ambitious plans for coronavirus relief, infrastructure investment and tax hikes. He's expected to sign two more executive orders today, one focused on raising the minimum wage to $15 for the federal workforce and the other on expanding assistance for Americans in need as he continues his swift efforts to overturn his predecessors' policies. He'll sign these two executive orders aimed at speeding pandemic stimulus checks to families who need it most and increasing food aid for children who normally rely on school meals as a main source for nutrition. He's proposed $1.9 trillion stimulus package using the two orders to try to ease the burden on people while the legislation is negotiated in Congress. He has made fighting the pandemic an early focus of his new administration. President Biden also pushed back on a reporter at a press briefing yesterday who questioned whether the new administration's coronavirus vaccine goal is ambitious enough. He has set a goal to vaccinate 100 million Americans during his first 100 days in office. And during that press conference, he called the Trump administration's distribution of the vaccines a dismal failure so far, warning that things are going to continue to get worse before they get better. Dr. Anthony Fauci made his public first appearance at the White House in weeks, telling reporters he feels somewhat liberated in embracing a science-based approach in the new Biden administration. In addition to his actions yesterday mandating the use of masks and federal property and rejoining the World Health Organization, President Biden signed 10 executive orders and directives. He is expected to lift the military's ban on transgender service members within the coming days, and the reversal of former President Trump's ban was among his first campaign promises and has been long awaited by the LGBTQ community. President Biden revoked a recent Trump administration report that aimed to promote patriotic education in schools, but that historians mocked and rejected as political propaganda. A bust of Cesar Chavez now graces Biden's Oval House. As a son and part of the family, I'm very proud that my father's bust is in the president's office, said Paul Chavez, son of the late civil rights leader. The copper bust was taken from the White House at the behest of the administration to sit in the front of the Resolute desk. Busts of Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, former Senator Robert F. Kennedy, and former First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt also grace the Oval Office. Several lawmakers plan to urge President Biden today to restore a flag honoring missing war veterans to the White House after former President Trump angered some veterans by moving it. Meanwhile, Donald Trump spent his first hours as a private citizen scrambling to find lawyers to represent him in his upcoming impeachment trial as he settled into his new home at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida. Mitch McConnell proposes delaying the impeachment trial until February so the Trump team can prepare. Security is still tight in Washington. It's the new normal, with more than 10,000 National Guard members expected to remain in the nation's capital for now. And we do have the Democratic-controlled Congress easily passing legislation requiring to confirm retired General Lloyd Austin as President Joe Biden's Secretary of Defense, brushing aside concerns that his retirement occurred inside the 7-year window that safeguards civilian leadership of the military. President Joe Biden is hiring a group of national security veterans with deep cyber expertise, drawing praise from former defense officials and investigators as the U.S. government works to recover from one of the biggest hacks of its agencies attributed to Russian spies. United States also seeking a 5-year extension of the new START treaty, asserting that President Biden has long been clear that this is in the national security interest of the United States. The Islamic State claimed responsibility for a rare suicide attack that rocked central Baghdad, killing 32 people and wounding dozens. The bombing targeted apostate Shiites, according to the group in an IS-affiliated website. And the Central African Republic has declared a state of emergency as the army and the UN forces try to repel advancing rebel groups who want to overthrow the government. The European Union and Turkey pressed each other to take concrete steps to improve relations long strained by disagreements over energy, migration and Ankara's human rights record. Russian authorities detained a top aide of jailed opposition politician Alexei Navalny and warned social media platforms against spreading online calls to stage weekend protests. The European Union's chairman told Russian President by telephone to release the opposition politician Alexei Navalny and insisted on an investigation into his August poisoning. Hungary has signed a deal to buy Russia's Sputnik vaccine, the first European Union country to do so. European Union leaders seek to address the coronavirus pandemic's mounting challenges, from containing more infectious variants to the threat of border closures and the slow rollout of vaccines across the bloc. The Commission will seek clarification from Pfizer for new delays in delivering the vaccines. Hotspots of COVID-19 infections in the European Union will be labelled dark red zones, and travellers from those areas will be required to take a test before departure and undergo quarantine. The number of people testing positive for coronavirus in England has decreased slightly in the latest week, but prevalence overall remained high. The three mutant variants of the coronavirus that emerged in Britain, South Africa and Brazil pose a high risk in Europe, as they have led to increased transmissibility. Germany has recorded more than 50,000 deaths from the pandemic. And Hong Kong will place tens of thousands of its residents in a lockdown to contain a new outbreak of the coronavirus, the first such measure the Chinese-ruled city has taken since the pandemic began. Meanwhile, Beijing launching mass COVID-19 testing in some areas today, and Shanghai testing all hospital staff as China battles its worst outbreak of the disease since last March, with families fretting over Lunar New Year reunion plans amid these new curbs. China reported its first cluster of cases among workers in a meat processing plant, raising fears among local consumers who have until now mainly worried about the safety of imported foods. In a final sweep at China, the Trump administration's outgoing UN ambassador tweeted that it's time for the world to oppose China's efforts to exclude and isolate Taiwan, drawing sharp criticism from Beijing. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the World News on Radio Caravan. Indonesia has ended its search for the crash plane's victims as well as the debris. The plane that nosedived into the Java Sea, killing all 62 people. Myanmar received 1.5 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine today, supplied by India to inoculate 750,000 people, the first vaccine batch delivered to the Southeast Asian country as it fights one of the worst COVID-19 outbreaks in the region. India will begin commercial shipments of the vaccine to Brazil and Morocco today, followed by Saudi Arabia and South Africa, as Prime Minister Modi attempts to burnish his credentials as a key global leader. He said that India was completely self-reliant on the coronavirus vaccine supplies, as the world's second most populous country inoculated more than 1 million people within a week of starting that massive campaign. The Prime Minister sought to dispel fears and misconceptions over the efficacy and safety of the vaccines in an interaction with health workers in Varanasi, his Lok Sabha constituency. The making of vaccines against COVID-19 virus will be showcased during the Republic Day parade on the 26th of this month at the Rajpath in New Delhi. India, meanwhile, reported 14,500 new cases and 163 deaths in the last 24 hours. The caseload in Maharashtra crossed the 2 million mark. Maharashtra has recorded more cases than the next two worst-hit states, Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh, put together. In Karnataka's Shivamoga district, an explosion of a truckload of explosives suspected to be meant for mining killed at least 8 people, and the massive explosion took place near gravels and boulders crushing facility and sending shock waves also to the neighboring districts. Bhajan singer Narendra Chanchal has died at the age of 30, and as the tributes pour in, it was Narendra Chanchal who breathed his last in New Delhi this morning. The 11th round of talks between government and farmers have ended in a deadlock. Farmer unions today told the government they want a complete repeal of the 3 contentious farm laws, even as the centre asked them to reconsider its proposal for putting the acts on hold for 12 to 18 months. NCP President Sharad Pawar said he will take part in a protest plan in Mumbai to express support for the farmers agitating against these new agri-marketing laws enacted by the Modi government. And Congress party will have an elected president by June of this year. Congress also demanded a joint parliamentary committee probe into the purported WhatsApp chats of Arnab Goswami for breach of national security and violations of Officials Secret Act. Prime Minister Modi again lauded the stellar performance of the Indian cricket team as he addressed the 18th convocation of the Tejpur University in Assam via video conferencing. Pakistan and India sparred at the United Nations General Assembly over the situation of minority rights in each other's countries as the Assembly adopted a resolution co-sponsored by Pakistan condemning damage and destruction of religious sites. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi has urged the Biden administration to persevere with the Afghan peace deal, which was signed in Doha between the United States and the Taliban last year, and not to reverse things. And that's